Now available on Tata Sky channel number 526.
Welcome to this very special conversation. In our continued attempt on this channel to bring you face to face with the brilliant minds that are planning out our cities and our real estate market, I'm very fortunate to be in conversation today with Dr. Nandita Chatterjee. Now, she's the Secretary at the Urban Development, Housing and Ministry of Urban Policy Alleviation. Dr. Chatterjee, many thanks for giving us time. The biggest hurdle or the biggest task that the government has put forward for themselves is housing for all by 2022. A massive task for affordable housing. The debate within industry and among the people on the street is the definition of affordable housing. From inside the ministry, how are you looking at it? How are you defining affordable housing?
The ministry has not really got into the area of definition of affordable housing. What the ministry is trying to support or enable is those who are coming from the economically weaker sections of society, to support them so that they are financially empowered to afford a dwelling unit of their own. That is the purpose of the ministry.
But one of the very interesting plans that you're looking at is getting into a partnership with state governments, where the state governments provide the land and the central government looks at the actual construction. Which are the states you've worked with so far, and what sort of headway has been made on that plan?
Right. You see, the way, or rather the formulation that this ministry has in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which is also known as Housing for All Urban, it's like this, that the states agree to sign a memorandum of agreement with Government of India, saying that they wish to participate in the mission. Till now, 28 states have already signed the memorandum of agreement with us, which means they have confirmed to participate in the mission, and they have also agreed within specific timelines to introduce the reforms which the mission document.
Will you take us through what these reforms would be?
Yes. There are a set of 5 to 6 reforms. To be more specific, I would like to enlist them. One is, we are basically trying to see a kind of a situation where there is adequate planning, where there is master plans, earmarking of residential zones, single window for approvals, so there's no delay. There is also a well-formalized structure for tenancy, because rental housing goes as a complement to ownership housing. And we are also talking about the states encouraging the FAR, the FSI and the TDR, if they so wish, so as to encourage private builders to come in, because you will appreciate that housing is mostly supplied from the private sector.
Okay, and how would this work? Are you hoping the private sector approaches you to sign on, or will it have to go through each state government? Because
no, the modus operandi is this, that the states have signed the memorandum of agreement.
Sure.
Now, after this, the states actually go back and they create an awareness in which an eligible household, and household is defined as husband, wife and unmarried children. They are the ones to articulate their demands, saying that yes, I don't have a pakka house anywhere in India, and this is my family, and I wish to participate in this mission, and I demand a house under this mission. Once this happens, the states collects the demands and it prepares plans. Now, the plans can be prepared through a set of permutations and combinations of 4 verticals. What are these verticals? One is, there could be in situ slum rehabilitation, or if land is an issue, relocation, of course with an eye to the livelihood options. The second option is affordable housing in partnership that I just talked about, which basically is greenfield, looking at land being leveraged by the state, private partnership, encouraging them to have more extended FAR, TDR and FSI, where 35% is invested for the EWS, the rest is for the private developer. The third vertical is the one where the beneficiary themselves are quite at liberty to either construct a new house or to expand their house or to renovate their house, provided there's a significant addition to the physical assets. And the fourth is, of course, where we are trying to encourage the low-income groups as well as the economically weaker sections to take loans, housing loans. And for the first time, a very high proportion of housing loans are getting subsidized, 6.5%, which basically means that the market rate is 10.5%. You are an eligible beneficiary, and up to a loan of 6 lakhs, you are actually going to get a credit subvention of 6.5%, which means your EMI comes down from around 6,030 rupees to about 4,020 rupees.
Actually, the other thing, and I think this circles back to what you said about single window clearance, the clause that says you have to complete within 3 years, and I appreciate the spirit there, because there are projects that have been stalled and delayed and never get delivered, so it makes sense. But again, the industry's criticism there was, if I'm doing scale, which is, as a developer, the only way to really achieve affordable margins on affordable housing is to do it in scale, how can I complete in 3 years? Also, will the 3 years include all of my approvals, including the environment approvals, or will it just include, are you then ticking the clock from the first one, which is the IOD or the commencement certificate?
Yeah.
So, are you saying that's not rigid as well, or that's subject to interpretation?
Yes, there's some good news in this area. In the sense, first of all, the Ministry of Urban Development has almost finalized its model building bylaws, where they are talking about all clearances within 26 days. And this includes environmental forests.
Okay.
Yes. Now, we are hoping and expecting the model building bylaws will very soon be on the website and also circulated to the states. The second part is there has been a constant endeavor, particularly under the leadership of the Honorable Minister of Urban Development and Ministries of Housing, in which he has been continuously bringing together all the concerned ministries, so that human interface is reduced to a minimum and the developers are able to get their clearances online and within a very short period. I'll just give you a couple of examples. For example, civil aviation. Now, if you want to build near an airport, earlier you had to come to the National Airport Authority. Now what we are saying is the Civil Aviation Ministry, they've already prepared color-coded zoning maps for 12 airports, and they're planning to do another 4 very soon, within the next 3-4 months. What it basically means is that you enter your coordinates into the system, and if it is not within the regulated sector, you immediately get a clearance, you take a printout, and when you go to the municipality for your clearance, you just attach it.
Okay.
And you say, I've got the clearance. Similarly, the National Monuments Authority, the Ministry of Culture, they are also trying to get the clearance within 72 hours. They've actually developed an app. This is in connection in coordination with ISRO.
Yes.
What they're saying is that you have this handheld, you take a mobile, this app you download, and then what you do is but of course you have to be a little honest when you fit in your coordinates, and then you look at these regulated zones. If you get into the green zone, then you immediately take a printout and you get a clearance. So there is no human interface. You feed in your coordinates, you get your clearance, you get a printout, you go and attach it when you apply to the municipality. Now, even the defense, the local military authorities have been advise all urban local bodies about what is the non-regulated areas. So what we are really trying, and what our minister is really trying, is to see that within 30 days, you put in your application and you get all the clearances.
But a lot of these will again be state subjects and local municipalities.
Yes. Ultimately, it's urban local bodies. That's why the model building bylaws.
Yes. So these will be guidelines that put out by the central government.
Yes.
But will you still have to interact with each of these local bodies to make sure that they take them up, or will it happen automatically?
There are 2 ways of answering your question. One is, if you see the reform agenda, whether it's Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, whether it's Amrut, whether it's smart cities, all of them are saying that this is part of the reform agenda. So when the states are participating in the missions, it's automatically binding on them. And when the states say that, yes, by 17, 18, I am going to introduce this, or by 16, 17, I am going to do the single window, they are actually committing themselves. But the more related question is the urban local bodies. Now, the NDMC, the Mumbai Corporation, they are almost there. They are trying to do it by 31st March. But,
sorry to interrupt you. Mumbai still doesn't have a development plan. It's been being given extension after extension after extension.
But
that's critical to your your entire reform to be actioned is to have that development plan that earmarks these zones, which they haven't been able to.
This is being monitored very, very what shall I say, regularly.
Yes.
And now they've been told to clear everything by 31st March. So let's see. Yes.
Okay.
We presume they'll live up to their commitments.
The other thing that I know you're working on is simplifying the environment clearances, which right now is a long drawn-out process. I've had very large developers tell me it's taken them sometimes upwards of 3 years to get an environment clearance. We've seen the draft of what you're working on with the Environment Ministry. When is that going to be notified? Dividing it into 4 different categories. Every category has a set, rules. If you fit into the rules, then you'll get your clearance. How long before we actually see that being actioned?
Exactly. I was trying to answer that question. When I said the Ministry of Urban Development is finalizing its model building bylaws, it's almost there. They are incorporating the environment clearances in there, which basically, because I have been also a party to these discussions and stakeholder consultations, they are now basically looking at very few parameters which can be objectively be verified and which are very, very specific in nature, rather than, making it generic and making it vague. So that, and these are certain obvious ones which nobody can have a quarrel with. You need to have a sustainable habitat.
Right. Oh, when you say sustainable, and I want to quickly, slip in this question again, air pollution in all of our big cities right now has reached critical levels. Whether it's Mumbai, it's Bangalore, Pune is getting there really quickly, and Delhi, we know the kind of struggles Delhi's been through. How, where does air pollution fall right now? Is it in the Swachh Bharat program? Is it within the Urban Development Ministry? Who's looking at the problem, and how are we solving it?
Administration of this Air Pollution Act is with the Ministry of Environment and Forests.
Right.
And the CPCBs, which is the Central Pollution Control Boards, they are the bodies authorized to administer these.
But is it on top priority for the government at this point?
Definitely.
I know you're also working on a rental housing program that we haven't seen yet. Tell us what the plans are for rental housing, because it's true that housing for all needn't be housing ownership for all. It could also be housing rental for all, as long as there's good quality construction being made available. What is the rental housing program that you're working on?
See, this rental housing policy, it was first articulated by a task force. After that, we took it up for stakeholder discussions. There was a draft prepared, which was put on the website for a very long time.
Yes.
So I really wish you had a look at it.
No, we've had a look at that.
You did.
I want to know how long before
then on 4th December, we did a stakeholder consultation. We did a few more churnings. And at the moment, it's in a stage where I am just moving it for getting the approvals.
Okay.
Right. So it's almost finalized, but we are now finalized from the point of view of policy making, from the point of view of the ministry, but we need to get our authorizations and approvals. We are now in that process. We expect that within maybe the next 2-3 months, we should be able to get an articulated policy. Yes.
That will make a massive difference to
Yes,
housing.
because unless you work in as a complement to rental ownership housing, a lot of informal settlements can be taken care of if there's a very good rental housing in place, which, in addition to play our market forces, is able to cater to the vulnerable sections of society who actually go into informal settlements because they can't afford the market rates of rent.
Again, wouldn't housing or residential rental REITs go really well with the plan that you've already made?
Absolutely.
I mean, it would make perfect sense at this point. So is that something that you'd like to personally see happen?
Yes. And if you have seen the budget, if you have followed the budget declarations statements in some detail, you'll find that now the REITs will not be subject to dividend distribution tax of 17%.
True, but as they're designed right now, they'll only focus on commercial property, commercial rental property. Whereas if they were to be allowed to look at residential rentals, it would it would help your policy tremendously.
There has been a pronouncement by SEBI. I suggest you check on this, where they are not but they are thinking on the lines.
They're thinking on those lines, but
exactly. Yes, you have to follow it up with them.
Okay.
Right.
I really want to talk to you about the Real Estate Regulatory Authority, or the bill. It's going to be a massive change for every home buyer in this country. It means such a great deal. From the government's point of view, tell us what you're hoping to achieve with this bill? I know that, and it's accepted, every new regulator will come with its adjusting period and some hiccups and some groaning from the industry in the beginning. But over a period of time, what sort of industry do you foresee going forward?
The purpose is twofold. One is to introduce regulation in this sector. Number two is to look at consumer protection.
Right.
Number three, to introduce transparency and accountability. And number four, to introduce governance so that there's investor confidence in the sector.
I know you don't want to go too much into the specifics, but like we discussed, once your single window clearance comes in, industry has been talking about the fact that, if I'm going to be regulated, then the people who hand me the permission should also come under the purview of the same regulator. But is that something that you have considered, or do you believe that your new model guidelines will solve those problems, so there's no real need to bring people under those?
The ease of doing business is something which we are pursuing repeatedly and continuously as part of the executive decisions.
Okay.
And not as part of an enactment. And that's why we are pushing it simultaneously. That's one.
Yes, public sector construction comes within it.
Yes, the institutions like
but not local body authorities handing out permissions.
No, we are not talking about permissions here. We are talking about everybody. The scope is from sale to possession.
Right.
So any government body which is building houses or is in real estate development will come within the purview. So it's a very comprehensive coverage.
Again, every state will have to set up its own regulator and its own appellate tribunal. How much room will the states have to interpret the bill based on their particular needs? And have you been in conversation with states? How many of them are ready? How long do you think it's going to be before they can actually action this?
There has been a large number of stakeholder consultations before this entire process was taken up. So I think the states would be on board, because this is the result of a very large degree of stakeholder consultations, and particularly with states.
There was also, very quickly under the PM Awas Yojana, you just announced 80,000 homes that would be built across the states that you've already had conversations with. While that's a massive project, we're still short of our final target of housing for all by 2022. Is this the model that will then be replicated across the country? Is there more that you're looking at, or is there a larger plan in the works for housing?
Right. See, we have kind of estimated what could be the year-wise target.
Right.
Of course, a lot depends on the states, but unless one has some kind of a plan, one cannot move. And 80,000, I think, is history, because as I speak to you today, we have already accepted for funding 5,12,000 dwelling units. And by March, I am looking at a figure of 6 lakhs.
Okay.
Yes. You see, a large number of these, about 60% of these are beneficiary-led constructions. So he already has he has the house or he has the plot. Right. So ideally 1 year should be the time period for this. Regarding affordable housing projects, the time should be 2 to 3 years. Slums will also take the same. And as far as the loan is concerned, if you take a loan and you buy a house, automatically that becomes, a factor, an ipso facto activity. So the way we are looking at is this, that initially there will be maybe 10 lakhs, 12 lakhs, after which we're going to jump into figures of 30 lakhs, 48 lakhs. In 1819 or 1718, we are looking at a peak, which may actually look at building 48 lakh houses. And gradually it will taper.
Okay. We talked about land and solid waste management and, of course, air pollution. But the other big crisis that's looming for India is water. And when we talk about housing of this scale that you just mentioned, providing water to all of these homes will be a challenge. For whomever is looking at this problem. How are you looking at the water issue and our rapid urbanization across our cities? How are we going to solve our water problem going forward?
See, regarding the class 1 cities, we are converging with Amrut, which is the other mission, which is the mission for rejuvenation of the infrastructure.
Yes.
Regarding the others, which are not class 1 cities, we are obviously, you see, when we take up any particular proposal for funding, the first thing we satisfy ourselves is the states or the urban local bodies' plans for providing infrastructure, and we will not consider a dwelling unit to be complete unless it has two things. One is electricity and the other is water supply. So it's an issue of convergence.
Well, the other thing that I believe is very, very commendable is the Smart Cities project and the plans that were submitted by all of those cities, the interaction that they got from their citizens to make those plans. So we have our first 20 list, and they're all brilliant cities, and we've spoken with commissioners of each of those 20 cities, and they have very ambitious plans. And the fact that they competed against each other, I think, shows a certain amount of ambition within our cities that we haven't seen up till now. What about the rest? I know there's a fast-track program for another 23, but there are large cities that have sort of not qualified at all. Cities like Mumbai, like Bangalore, that weren't able to compete, weren't able to qualify, but desperately need the help at this point to rejuvenate all of their urban planning. Will that be then Amrut that looks at those cities? Or is there a method in which the government is sort of encouraging them to come back and compete again?
See, let me explain the concepts. First of all, it's not a question of only 20. There's a list of 98 which had been shortlisted, and all of them will gradually start coming up the ladder as they qualify.
Will eventually qualify.
So that's obviously putting that matter to rest. The second issue is, let's try to understand what each one is trying to do. Smart cities are actually the apex position.
Yes.
What is a smart city? A smart city is a city which is going to have affordable housing, general housing, rental housing, infrastructure, water supply, connectivity, transport, and smart solutions to each of these. That's a smart city. And while I look at all this from the supply side, the other important side is the urban local body competent enough, generate its resources, to get into retrofitting, to get into application of smart solutions, to look at public participation, to try and converge public opinion, to see how much of public opinion they're able to respond to. So smart city is an apex situation where Housing for All, Amrut, and other initiatives like Digital India and Startup India, because livelihoods are also an issue, and also looking at initiatives like Mudra, which is also linked to livelihood, are all coming as a convergent situation in the context of a particular city. So we have to understand this not as separate missions, but as a mission which is actually going to go and pull together all the missions with it.
I have one very quick last question for you. Robert Urban just released a report where he said
Which one?
Robert Urban released a report where he said that China is likely to grow faster than India because it has larger urban spaces and better managed urban spaces. Is that, it's sort of a veiled challenge to us and our urban spaces, but in an ideal world where all of the plans that you're looking at play out over the next 5 odd years, will we actually then, through our urban spaces, put the country in a completely different track of growth?
See, I'll answer your question like this. You are aware that as on today, 31% of the population are living in urban areas. And the way our projections go, when you come to 2041, you'll perhaps see about 47% living in urban areas, which is the tipping point when India will call itself an urbanized economy.
Yes.
And you would be aware that talk about GDP contribution, talk about employment, talk about contribution to the total output. The urban sectors are a very large contributor. So today, one of the biggest mandates we have is to manage urban spaces so that when it comes to 2030, when we try to adhere to the Sustainable Development Goals or the COP21, or you come to the urbanized economy, we should have, as functionaries, very well planned urban spaces which gives people the right to dignified quality living.
Dr. Chatterjee, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I wish you very, very good luck for all of your programs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Magicbricks Now. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magicbricks Now. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/Magicbricks Now.